Hi guys, welcome to another tutorial. Today I am going to be sharing with you how to make an off-shoulder ruffle dress. Now the first thing you have to know is that making an off-shoulder dress, it has to start from around those points, that is your armhole or bust area point, not from your shoulder but from this area. So that means you have to take off about 4.5 or 4 inches, 5 inches, depending on how much of your chest you want to show. Now I'm going to be taking off 4.5 from my pattern. As you can see, I will take off 4.5, and from this 4.5 I will take all my measurements. Now I will take off 4.5 and I will mark my armhole circumference divided by 2, and mine is 9 inches. Now also take off 4.5 inches again, and now we're going to mark our bust point. My bust point is 11.5 inches, which I just placed right there. Now I will take my under bust measurement, which is 14.5 inches, and I will also connect the line. Now the next thing I will do is to take my waist measurements, which is 17 inches, and as you can see, I took off 4.5 inches as I take all these measurements. Now next thing you're going to do is from this line you will take your waist to hip measurement. Mine is about 9.5 inches. You can also do so from your shoulder. You take your waist, your shoulder to your hip points, but I prefer to always take mine from the waist. Now I am taking my length measurement. The length I am working with is 35 inches. Now I would connect my line. Now I will just go on and take my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 8 inches. Divided by 2 is 4 inches. And that is what I am placing on my pattern. Now once I am done placing my 4 inches mark, I will connect all the lines. Now from my hip line, I will go upwards by 2 inches so as to start placing my darts. Now before placing my darts, I will just label my pattern. This is my hip line. Here is my waist line and my under bust line. And here is my bust point. And this is my bust line. And down here is the length I want for my dress. Now at this bust point area, we're going to go upwards by 1 inch and also come downwards by 1 inch so as to avoid friction around the bust area. Now at the waist part, I will take my darts 1 inch for darts at each side, and also on the under bust 1 inch for my darts at each side. Now right here I am placing ½ inch on both sides for my darts, and next thing I will do right now is to connect all my dart lines. Now on my bust line, I will take my bust circumference divided by 4, and whatever that I have right here, I would replace right here, and also I would add 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. Now next thing you're going to do is come down to your under bust area and take your under bust circumference divided by 4. And that is what I'll place right there. And I'll place my darts 2 inches for my darts and also 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. Now on my waistline, I will take my waist circumference divided by 4. place it right there, and also take my darts 2 inches and also 1.5 for sewing allowance. Now on my hip line, I will take my hip circumference divided by 4, and I would add 1.5 inches for seam allowance. Now to get the measurements you need to place on your length, you need to measure your hip circumference, which I took right here. Now I would minus 1 inch from that hip measurement. Then I would add my sewing allowance. Now I would add my hemming allowance at the bottom part, connect all my lines. Always make sure you have no sharp edges on your pattern. I'll just create a curve right there. Now to get your perfect armhole, this is what I usually do. Take your shoulder to shoulder measurements. Mine is 16, divide it by 2, which is going to give you 8. Now add your 1 inch for that. That's this 1 inch for that we placed at the shoulder area. Now add that 1 inch, that would be 9. When making an off-shoulder pattern, the best way to get the neckline is to divide your shoulder and minus whatever you get by 2. Now that I have 9, I will minus it by 2, and what I would get would be 7 inches, and I'll be using 7 inches for my neckline. And now I'll just place my 7 inches right there, and I would add ½ inch to join to the sleeve, and I would just connect my armhole curve. And the next thing we're going to do is to cut this pattern out. Now, because your front pattern is folded in half, you need 2 for the side and also 2 for the center front. And for the center front, this part is going to be on fold. Now, I don't want mine to have the straight look. However, if you want a sweetheart look, just go upwards from your bust point by 2 inches, and it also depends on how deep you want your sweetheart to go. Now, next thing you're going to do is just connect your curve, your sweetheart curve like this, and just cut out your pattern. Now, I don't want mine to have a sweetheart look. I will just go downwards from my pattern, from the top of my pattern by 1.5, and I will just connect my curve like this. Now I will just go ahead and cut this out. Now you can as well drag your curve all the way to this armhole point, but I will just cut mine from this point and cut this pattern out, and also cut out the rest of the darts. Once I am done cutting, I'll cut this on my fabric and also on my lining. Now on my back pattern, I have placed my zipper allowance, which is about 1.5 inches. Now next thing I am going to do right now is to take off 4.5 inches, just like we did while drafting the front pattern. Now I am going to place my armhole measurement, which is 9 inches, and which is also going to be our bust line. Now I will take my waist measurements. Now next thing I will do is to take my waist to hip, which I said is 9.5 inches for me. Now I'll just connect my line, and the next measurement I am going to take is going to be the length I want for my dress, which is 35 inches plus hemming allowance. Now on my bust line, I will take my bust circumference divided by 4, and I will place that mark right there. And I am also going to take my sewing allowance, which is 1.5 inches. Now next thing I am going to do right now is to take my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which is 4 inches, and I'll place that all the way to the bottom of my dress, and I'm going to connect the line. Now from my bust area, I'll go downwards by 1 inch, and from my hip area, I'll go upwards by 1 inch. Now on my waist area, I'll take ½ inch on both sides for my darts, and now I'll just go in and connect my dart lines. On my waist, I will take my waist circumference divided by 4, and I will measure whatever that I have on my waistline. I'll place that dart right there, and I'll also place 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. Now I will take my hip circumference on my hip line divided by 4, and also place my 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. Now just like we did for the front, minus 1 inch from your hip circumference and place it right there, and also your sewing allowance, and I will just connect my lines. Just like we did while drafting the front pattern, we are also going to do the same for the back pattern. Now my shoulder to shoulder will be divided by 2 because my pattern is on fold, and that will be 8 inches. Now I'll minus this 8 inches by 2 because whatever your shoulder to shoulder is, once you minus it by 2 inches, that will give you your off shoulder neckline pattern. Now I'll place this neckline on my pattern, which is 6 inches, and I'll connect my armhole cuff. Now because my camera didn't show this that well, I will just show you how I placed my 6 inches. I placed it from this line, and that is how I got my 6 inches. Then I connected my armhole. Cut your side back too, and also your center back too, and I'll cut this out, and also cut this on my fabric and also on my lining. Now because I want my back to have a little bit of curve at the back, I'll take 1 inch right there, and I'll just connect that 1 inch upwards like this, and I'll cut this out. And this way your back is going to have a little bit of curve. Now you can decide to skip this part. It's totally optional. You can decide to just have a straight look. Now I'll just cut out the rest of my darts, and we are done with the back pattern. Now here is a rough sketch of what we are trying to create. This is going to be the ruffle, and now to draft this ruffle, all you have to do is take the circumference of your shoulder like this. All you have to do is just measure from around your shoulder, from the front all the way to the back. Now mine is 45 inches. Now whatever you get, you need to times that by 3. And once I times this gives me 135. Now to get the amount of fabric you need to work with, you need the length of your fabric to be about 135. Thus from here to here is 135. Now I want my width to be about 10 inches. You can use 6 inches, you can use 8, you can even use 12, depending on how small or how big you want your width to be. Now let's say you want the ruffles around the armhole area to go down a little bit more than the ones around the bust area. Now all you have to do is to create that shape on your pattern. Just create that curvy shape from one end and create it to the other. Now let's say this is your fabric. You need your length to be 135. Now you make sure that your fabric is on fold so as to cut your 10 inches, which is going to be for the width. And that means when you open up your fabric, you're going to have about 20 inches in total for the width of your fabric. Now as you can see, I have cut out my patterns, and in another video I am going to show you how to sew these pieces together perfectly and nice. If you like this video, do give it a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel. Let's grow this channel together, and hope to see you in much more exciting tutorials to come. See ya. Bye.